Well, it's 7 o'clock, so I guess I would say good evening to everybody that's here. I'll talk for about a minute, so to see if we get more people show up, because a lot more people are signed up than have shown up. Thank you all for coming. This is the last RMHAM Tech Talk for this year that we have signed up. We are trying to get one spun up for May, but we don't actually have somebody on the schedule yet. Also, I'd like to remind you that the beginning of April's RMHAM Tech Talk is going to be by myself and Dave Masarowski on mountaintop applications of Raspberry Pis, or single board computers, really. It's not just Raspberry Pi. So that's something to sign up for as well. I also have to remind you that RMHAM is a 501c3 that lives on donations. So if you are so inclined, please visit our website and see what you can do about contributing to all of the ongoing projects. Well, that's an awfully short list of people, considering how many people showed up. I guess this is recorded, so some people are probably going to figure out tomorrow that it was tonight. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead?
All right, so if I can figure out why this is auto going, and okay, there we go. So, thanks for coming. For those that are here, my name is Mike. My call sign is K0NGA. You probably know me from the DMR Tech Nets that go on every month. I do a lot of the, I do all of, in fact, all the Chinese radio DMR code plugs. I don't actually own a Motorola radio for various reasons, some of them which are not voluntary. And I also am a big enthusiast around these hotspots. I will not tell you how many hotspots that I own because I don't want people turning me in for being insane. But I spent a lot of time in the last month or so getting ready for this talk. Now, what spawned this talk is I actually had a one-on-one session with a gentleman not from New Mexico, from Colorado or New Mexico. I think it was actually in Florida, who contacted me via email, and he was having some issues, and I was able to get him going. But even with the information that's on the internet, there still seems to be kind of a gap in understanding about how these things work, especially when you talk about the Pi-Star. Because Pi-Star software runs on a Raspberry Pi. Generally, there's other boards that are supported, but that kind of out of scope here. And you also utilize either a hat or a USB dongle in order to do the radio part. And there's a little bit of assembly required, a little bit of configuration that has to be done. So I figured I would have this session to go over how this is done from the ground up, to get it up and running and get transmitting out on Brandmeister. Now, this is the first time I've given this talk. This is brand new, first time I've done this, so there is going to be some guinea pigging going on. So I do apologize if we run into some technical issues. I have practiced the technical side of this several times. So, but anytime anything goes live, things can happen. If you have a question during the chat, during the conference, please put in the question in the chat. John is monitoring the chat, and I will stop from time to time and see what questions have come up. If you would like to ask your question over audio, let us know, and John can unmute you to ask the question if you think it's too complicated or too long to type into the chat.
And you could unmute yourself.
And you can unmute yourself, but again, if we ask that you wait until we do the Q&A at the end of a slide or whatnot before you just jump in. I will stop often. And then once we get into past the presentation and into the practical side of things, this is, again, it's going to be more of an open workshop discussion kind of thing. All right. Without further ado, we're going to start with some basics. And that basics starts with really what is a hotspot. Hotspot is not a term that is unique simply to ham radio, but in terms of ham radio, a hotspot is a small portable device which connects over to the internet to one of a list of network repeater systems, allowing communication via certain types of radios, most commonly digital radios, right? So we talk about, in this talk, we're going to be talking about DMR radios and Brandmeister. So DMR is the radio technology, Brandmeister is the network, right? There are other networks. There are other radio types. These, and we'll get to that a little bit here in a minute and see a list of the different protocols that these things and a list of the radio technologies that they can use. Now, within the realm of hotspots, there are more than one type of hotspot. Should come as no surprise to anybody. There is an off-the-shelf hotspot product called the OpenSpot, made by Shark RF. It is plug and play, but Pi-Star is more of a build your own hobby, hands-on kind of thing. So Pi-Star is the software. It is a digital voice software for personal low-powered hotspots as well as repeaters. This comes straight from the Pi-Star site. It can handle multiple protocols and modes and multiple cross modes when used with multi-mode digital voice modem that supports these modes. Okay, that's a lot of stuff to say. The Pi-Star is the software that makes this work. All right, Pi-Star is not the hardware. The hardware is a whole separate component of this entire enterprise that we're talking about here tonight. But Pi-Star is the software. It's the most popular. It is as much plug and play as you can get when you're talking about different types of boards you can run it on, different types of shields you can use, and those kind of things. So it takes a lot of different code, open source code, melds it together with an interface, and puts it into a package that's easy for an end user to deploy. So there's a lot of people behind this, a lot of individual hands and programmers that have contributed to the project to improve the project and to make it work. All right. Now, why do you want one of these things? What do these hotspots do? Now, the first thing is, do you really want one? Putting one of these together can be a fantastic experience for those who like to build things and like to tinker. If you're an off-the-shelf kind of guy that just wants to put it in, plug it in, type a few lines and go, Pi-Star might not be for you. You might want to go and invest in an OpenSpot. I personally love to do this kind of stuff, so this is right up my alley. Now, be outside of just Pi-Star versus OpenSpot, you might want one for several reasons. The biggest one is for coverage issues, right? You're out in the middle of nowhere. You don't have a Brandmeister connected repeater in your area, and you'd like to get on Brandmeister, or you live in a dead spot. I've been in a place where I've lived in a dead spot. It wasn't fun. Now, something that we put up there that repeaters in your areas are too busy tends not to be a problem around here because we're kind of spoiled for repeaters. Now, in the early days, also of Brandmeister, you ran into repeater owners that would block talk groups that you want to talk to on Brandmeister. They would actually, you can lock it down using something like Seabridge and only allow certain talk groups. And if you wanted them to activate a talk group on your local Brandmeister repeater, you had to call them up or send them an email and kind of go in a lobby for your talk group to be activated. With the hotspot, you don't have that problem because you are the repeater operator of your own hotspot. And besides, why not? It's a lot of fun. All right. Now, let's talk about some protocols. Obviously, DMR. I'm the DMR guy. So that's obviously a thing. D-Star and the backend D-Star reflectors as far as the network. Those are supported. System Fusion / C4FM is supported. NXDN, P25, and for some reason, POXSAG, because why not? POXSAG to me seems like one of those things they added in because the modem hardware will do it. And so they figured, we'll just throw it in just for completeness sake, right? I don't know a lot of people using POXSAG on these, but some people do. So, like I said, why not? Networks that are supported include, again, DMR networks like DMR Plus and Brandmeister, D-Star reflectors, DCS, XLX, Ref, and XRF, System Fusion, FCS, and YS reflectors, and others. Stay tuned because this software is in constant development. So other things come up. I would not be shocked at all if they decided to add support for those into the software. All right. Any questions at this point? Now, this is kind of just like we're doing an overview here so we can get into the fun meat part of it, but I wanted to stop here and make sure there weren't any questions. Any questions in the chat, John? You're muted, John.
Just a comment from Greg that says they're fun.
They are fun. I think they're fun. Like I said, if you're a ham, chances are this is going to be fun for you. I know a lot of people that are just like, I don't get it, that aren't hams and whatnot. That's their thing. But I'm also kind of big, more lately getting into the maker community with the small microboards and those kind of things. I'm very, very excited for the talk next month with Willem. But yeah, this has been, for me, for the guy that likes to tinker with these things, it's been a lot of fun. All right, what do you need to make one of these? All right, first, you're going to need a Raspberry Pi. Now, I put a Raspberry Pi on there. There are other boards that are supported, but it is Pi Star. It was originally built on a Raspberry Pi, and you will have a lot less headaches if you just use a Raspberry Pi. All right, now, this can be done with a Pi Zero. I am kind of from the Tim the Toolman Taylor school of electronics. It's like if it's working fine, it probably needs more power. All right, most commonly, this is done on a Pi 3, a B or a B plus or something like that. The Pi 4s can be used. They're a little bit of an overkill, but hey, what's engineering without a little bit of overkill and being overbuilt? The 2 gig version is plenty. Don't waste your money on a 4 gig or an 8 gig. The Pi Star will not use the memory. It's the Pi Star B, the 3B plus uses 1 gig, has 1 gig of memory. It doesn't use all the memory on a Pi Star 3B plus. So 2 gig would be far more than sufficient. All right. So once you've got your board, then you need modem hardware. This is the actual radio part of it. Most of the versions that I've seen that I worked with here are what are called GPIO hats. So the general purpose IO pins on a Raspberry Pi plug into a little daughter board that is called a hat in the Pi world, that has all the radio hardware in it and the connector for the antenna and that kind of thing. All right. You can also use a USB dongle that does the same thing. So you don't necessarily need a hat. You can use a USB dongle, and then you will need the Pi Star software. Now, obviously, this is just for the Pi Star itself. This is not having a radio to transmit with. Obviously, is something that you want, but this is what you'll need as far as the hardware. The Pi Star software is distributed as an image. There are many different image softwares you can get to write that image to the micro SD card, which goes on, that then goes into your Pi Star build, and you boot from that. So you don't have to download any software once you have the Pi Star running. Everything is built into a single image. So when you boot up, we'll see this when we go into the workshop. You basically boot up, connect to it in one way or another. Again, we'll get into the options there, and then you go to a web interface, and immediately everything is done through the web interface. So unless you have to do something with a specialized screen, or if you want to do a software update on the Pi itself, you do not even have to go to a command line to get this up and running, which is really cool. And finally, you will need an internet connection. All right. This can be wired or wireless. Okay. That's because to connect to the networks, the Pi goes over the internet, right? So obviously you need an internet connection. Wired connections are always going to be more stable than a wireless connection, but they're not required. I have all of my Pis running on a wireless in my house just because I can't run cables everywhere. And we'll see how you can actually set this up. I'll demonstrate this. Set this up wirelessly without having to connect it into with a wire first. They have provisions in the software to make that happen so that you never have to plug it into an Ethernet port. Okay, questions at this point?
GUIs are for sissies. Real men use the command line.
Well, good luck with this because there's not a whole lot of command line in the Pi Star. So sorry, we're gonna have to wuss out. Any other questions or comments in the chat? All righty. So here's something just popped in the chat.
Greg said SSH is your friend.
Yes, but SSH is useless if there's no command line to be done. Okay. So what we're going to
tunnel.
So what we're going to, again, it's all UI interface. It's all web interface. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you how to connect to the Pi, connect to the Pi and get it connected to the internet. We're going to do a basic configuration. We're going to talk about frequencies because it's a big thing. It became a problem, so we do need to talk about it. We're going to choose a protocol. We're going to set the radio ID or the repeater ID, or the hotspot ID, and an ESID for the Pi. We're going to choose a server, which is a Brandmeister server, and provide the hotspot password. And then we're going to do a test to see if everything's working. Optionally, as we go down, we're going to go into some additional topics towards the end, where we're going to show you why you would need to set your Raspberry, your Pi Star as public, and then lock it down by setting allowed radio IDs. Show you how to set up Brandmeister API integration so that you do not have to go to the Pi Star website to set static talk groups, which is always a good thing to be able to do that from one screen. And then if you have a device or want to add a nextgen display to your Pi, I will show you how to get the driver running in 4.1.4, because things went a little wonky in the 4.1.4 timeframe. All right, let's do this live. Okay. All right. Let me share this out. Actually, first of all, let me pop out of there, because the presentation is done. All right. All right, you should all be seeing the Brandmeister website, hopefully. Yes?
We do.
Excellent. Okay, so what you're going to have to, because they created a requirement for Pi Star security. If you go to the Brandmeister network, you'll notice down here there's an announcement on December 5th of last year. Hotspot security now, password now required when connecting to United States Brandmeister master servers. Okay. Now they did this because obviously, until they did this, anybody could set up a Pi Star, take your radio ID, and connect into the network and pretend that they're you, and that's not groovy. So there's a place up here to register at the Brandmeister network. You only need to register, and once you do, all right. Nope. What's my password? There it goes. And for right now, for some reason, the icons aren't showing up again, which is really fun. You'll get this little menu here. What you'll need to do is go down to self-care. All right. Now the way that they do this is they will scan, from what I understand, the way this works, they scan the list of radio IDs given out by radioid.net, and they'll match your radio IDs with your call sign. All right. So what you need to do is go up to the right, go to self-care, and down here in self-care, there's this area here for hotspot security. You need to toggle that to on, set a password, and hit save. I've already got my password set up, but that is the first thing that you'll need to do, because otherwise you're not going to be able to connect to Brandmeister at all. It's just not going to work. That is a requirement now. The Brandmeister website is also awesome because it'll show you where all the repeaters are in your area. You can do a last heard on the entire network, which is fantastic. And then the main board here shows you how many repeaters and how many hotspots are on the network. You'll notice that the hotspots outnumber the repeaters 3-to-1. Wasn't always that way, but it seems to be the new way of things. All right, now, once you get your hardware put together, the first thing you need to do is go to pistar.uk, that without the dash. This is the Pi Star home site. Go down to the downloads, hit download Pi Star, and here are the versions. Now, there's a lot of different versions. This can get a little confusing. There's a Nano Pi Air, there's a Nano Pi V3, there's an Odroid, an Orange Pi, an RPI. Like, what does this mean? If you scroll down just a little bit down here, there's this area down here that tells you what they all mean. Okay. Now, if you're doing like me with a standard Raspberry Pi, what you want is this last one on the list here, the Pi Star RPI. RPI stands for Raspberry Pi. 4.1.4 is the latest version, released February of last month, 8th of February, which is last month. Yeah, February of last month. That's really intelligent there, Mike. You download that, you get a zip. And when you unload the zip, it's just an IMG file. It's an image file, right? Now, for anybody who hasn't used a Raspberry Pi, the drive on a Raspberry Pi is a little micro SD card. Okay, so you need to find a way to get this micro SD card attached to your computer so you can write something to it. I have this nice little dongle that supports both micro SD cards and regular SD cards. Most laptops nowadays will come with a SD card slot. And nowadays also every micro SD card will come with an SD card adapter. All right, so you just put the little SD card into the SD card adapter. You put this into your laptop, everything's groovy. Or you can get one of these dongles that supports either SD cards or micro SD cards. Pop it into your USB drive as I get really close to my microphone here. All right. And then now the software that they recommend is this one called Balena Etcher, right? You can use the Raspberry Pi Foundation etcher or the imager for this as well. If you pop that open, this is the version 1.6. If you choose OS, you can go down here to say use custom image. So you can use that if you want to. For this demo, we'll use the actual recommended software. So you flash some file, you select your target, which will be whatever drive that comes up as. You hit flash, and it writes it down to the drive. Now I'm not going to do that here because this takes a while. You want to, if you can, invest in a micro SD card that has a little speed on it, because otherwise this is going to take a while. I mean, it depends on what your patience level is and just how much coffee you have left in your coffee cup. But once that file is written to the disk, that disk is now a boot drive. And you can take that out, slop it into your Raspberry Pi, and boot it up. Any question about that process?
There is a question from Jen Rooney. What protocol / micro SD image required?
It'll use pretty much any modern one. I wouldn't go any larger than like 4 or 8 gig just because it can't use all the space. But it'll use every single one that I've gotten up to. I actually tried it on one of these newfangled the 512 gig super fast like camera SD cards. Works just fine. So the key there is just now people will tell you that the what was the one brand that works better than everybody else?
SanDisk.
SanDisk, yeah. What they're really telling you is to stay away from the really cheap ones, right? Because anytime you get an SD cards were not designed to be boot drives for computers, right? Now the Pi Star is nice because, and something that you'll notice if you ever need to go and change something, as soon as it boots and it has all the software running in memory, it sets the file system to read only. But somebody's clacking on a computer somewhere.
Sorry, that's me.
Okay. So what that means is that it's not writing anything to the disk all the time, which means that your SD card will last a lot longer just on a standard Raspberry Pi, which is fantastic. That's the way it really should be. But SD cards were not meant for that kind of constant write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, right? They're meant for one long write and a read and an erase and a long write and one on the case for cameras and stuff. So get something that's quality, because the cheapy ones will cut corners on the write wearing. I use SanDisks. I also use the Samsung cards as well, and they've been just fine for me. But definitely do not cheap out on your SD card when you're talking anything to do with Raspberry Pi. All right. Any other questions?
I'll just comment that those SanDisk Type 10 SD cards is plenty fast,
Yeah.
and they're like $8 a piece. I mean, they're really cheap.
Yeah. Go down to Micro Center, have a fun time. Just I always take a shopping list when you go to Micro Center, or you walk out with spending twice as much as you intended to when you went in. I have that problem. All right. Now, one thing that I do want to make a note of is a certain website. This website is the Amateur Radio Notes website, amateurradionotes.com. There is an entire section on Pi Star. And what I've discovered is that every problem that I've run into with the exception of the recent nextgen driver issue, is addressed in this document. Right now, we're here because nobody wants to read through a document and they learn from somebody. But this document is a fantastic resource. If you need to go back and review something, highly, highly, highly recommended reading as you're getting into this. Now, the first thing we need to do is actually connect to the Pi-Star in order to start configuring it. So how the heck do we do that? It's not connected to the network. We've got the software in itself, but how do we connect to it? Now, here's the fun part. The software designers and with the image and whatnot have set it up so that if it doesn't have a network configuration, if it doesn't get an IP address from the wire, it sets itself up as a Wi-Fi access point. Okay. And if I go to my network settings here on my computer, you can see right there, there's the access point called Pi-Star Setup, Pi-Star.setup, right? That's an access point. And you can use this to access your Raspberry Pi over the network. Okay. Now, I did practice this. So if I get disconnected, stay put. I'll be right back because I'm going dual network here. And I did try this and before, and it works fine. This is one of those things that when you do it live, it might be a little wonky. But I'm going to go ahead and connect to this. And I hope I stay connected. Stay away. Okay.
You are still with us.
Yay. Now let's see if that worked. And it did. Now, the next thing that comes up is how do I know what address to use for connecting to the Pi-Star with the network? Now, there's a lot of bits where you can do where they say you can use just put in http://pi-star, or if you're on a Mac, pi-star.local. Depending on your DNS setup in your house, that may not work. So what you need to do in that case is know the IP address of the Pi. Now, this is my local network. The wireless network is the Pi, and you'll see, if you look at it, it gave me an address of 192.168.50.89, and it says that the gateway is 50.1. Anytime you see something like that, generally speaking, the 50.1 is the device that you want to go to. And in this case, that's true. So the default IP address, when you're connecting to the access point on the Pi-Star, is 192.168.50.1. Now, if you connect this with a wire, it's going to be a DHCP address from your home network. And you're going to have to go through whatever means necessary if you can't use the, Pi or Pi-Star or Pi-Star.local address to figure out what that IP address is. Now, I have a very, very, very wonky setup in my house. So I'm going to go to like that, and bam, that's the interface. So it says no mode defined, and it's going to automatically redirect us in 10 seconds to the configuration portal. Okay. Any questions about that particular process? Okay, this is now this getting to this point is the first major hurdle that most people run into, right? Just getting to where you can access the Pi-Star, right? Now, next thing. What I want to do now is get it connected to the internet, because we're not connected to the internet here. We're just connected to a device that has a Wi-Fi port that we can get to. You can do that. You can do this process on your phone, though it could be a little interesting getting your the numbers and everything in. You can do this on a laptop. I have a desktop that just happens to have a Wi-Fi card in it, just for to make this happen. But down here in this area is where you set up the Wi-Fi. Now, it's a little weird because we're connected to the Wi-Fi device now to talk to it. So it does say the interface is down. Ignore that. It's not a big thing. So what we want to do is we want to configure Wi-Fi. And this takes a second. There we go. And we're going to scan for networks. We'll worry about this regulatory domain here in a moment. but we're going to scan for networks. All right, and here's the networks in the house. Now I have a Pi 3B plus, which means it has 5 gigs and 2 gigahertz. If you're using a Pi 0 or an older Pi, it may only have 2 gigahertz. Just be aware of that. So I'm going to select this one here, and that puts it up here in the SSID spot automatically. And then I'm going to put in my password. I'm going to set the regulatory domain to US, because when they want to keep this legal, we'll double check this. And then what you're going to do is say save and connect. Boom. Now it's still going to say interfaces down, but if you want to go ahead and get this connected immediately, you go back to the top, you go to power, and you go reboot. Yes, we're going to reboot. And that will reboot the Pi. Now, if that works, it should come back up on that network with an IP address. Okay, so we're going to let that reboot. Questions about that particular process while we're waiting for the fancy reboot? Anyone? Anyone?
Well, Mike, quick question here. When this thing comes back up, how are you going to find it on your network? And I'm sure you're going to explain that to us.
The same way we did before, which is you either use the Pi, the Pi star, HTTP://Pi star, or Pi star.local. If that doesn't work and you have a wonky DNS like mine, you need to go to your DNS server and find out, figure out which IP address it got assigned. Okay. That is just something inside home networking that is just dependent on everybody's individual setup. So it's not something that I can universally say, here's the one way to do it, unfortunately. And I am in the wrong device. There we go. I have a few devices in my house, just a few. Willem, you'd be happy to know that my entire house is wired up with MikroTik.
Like there's any choice.
And Mike, if you're doing something we're not seeing and all we see is the Pi star.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything right now. I'm waiting for the device to come back up. So I need to just double checking that it came up correctly, because everything from here on depends on that coming up correctly. And it came up with a new IP address. Of course it did. Okay. Oh, okay, very good. All right. Now, again, you can go to the IP address. In my case, it's 77.23. And again, it's going to give you this no mode defined because we haven't set anything up on it. We just gave it an IP address. But now this is on my home network. Okay. And it's going to ask you to log in now that we're not on the internal access point. The default login, and again, this is documented, but a lot of people say, what's the default login? It's like, have you read the documentation? Pi-star and Raspberry. RASPBERRY. Now, the default login for the Raspbian, or what's now it's called Raspberry Pi OS, the default login for that is Pi and Raspberry, but here it's Pi-star and Raspberry as the default login. Okay, and we're back to here. So we've made our first step is done. We've logged into the configuration page and we've got the device on the internet. Awesome. All right. Now, fun things to do here. We're going to get this thing started up. As I close a few other windows here, support windows here that I have open. Very good. All right. This is where we start getting into the meat of things. Now, this host name at the top and we're going to ignore this for a second because this is mostly default. We can just leave that alone. Is the first thing we do is a host name. This is an actual host name on the network. You can change this to whatever it is, but this is why the HTTP colon, if you do this, we do the pi-star, why that works, right? Call sign, you definitely want to change this to your call sign, okay? And then we get into the radio frequency. Now, this is a big thing because earlier versions of the radio hats defaulted to a frequency range, which was a shared range with consumer electronics and satellite radio communication, amateur radio band, that kind of stuff. So you had a lot of Pi-Star guys who would leave this default, and then people were complaining because there was a lot of interference. So now most of the firmware, most of the legitimate firmware will not let you set an incorrect frequency outside of the band and whatnot. But we still need to do frequency coordination. It just so happens that very recently, if I can get this out of the way so I can get to the tab, the Colorado Council of Amateur Radio Clubs has set aside some frequencies specific for hotspots. So if you go to ccarc.net, here's the use plans here. You go to use plans, and under here, there's the CCARC guidelines on hotspots. That's this page, okay? So we strongly urge you, when you're picking a frequency for your Pi, to pick a frequency from this list, okay? Now the frequency, because I'm resetting up my Pi, so I want to get it the same as I had before. The frequency I had before was 438.6, which is that one there, okay? 438.6. And it automatically puts the zeros in later, all right? If you have a duplex hat, and this really only works well with a duplex hat, you will have a separate frequency for broadcast and for transmit and receive, right? So if we go to duplex mode, it doesn't do it immediately, so I'll show you that later. So you want the frequency for the transmit on your Pi-Star to be in the range, but as it says on the website down here, if your hotspot is operating full duplex, the receive frequency should be 5 megahertz lower, okay? So the receive frequency to the Pi, all right? Or to the Pi-Star. So your transmit frequency in this case would be 438.6, but the receive frequency for the Pi-Star device would be 433.6, okay? Should be pretty straightforward there. Any questions on this so far? All right, now, in this section down here, what this does here is send some information to various networks. Now, the Brandmeister is one of these networks. So when you go to the Brandmeister website and you look at the hotspot or the hotspot information page, it will show a location if you set one, right? So they can see where the hotspot is. You'll be amazed at how many hotspots are in the middle of the ocean, because these default coordinates are in the middle of the ocean. So I don't mind sharing out my QTH. So I have these set aside so I don't have to go typing them in, because I am efficient, which is just another way of saying I'm very, very lazy. All right. So my current QTH is in Parker, Colorado. Country is America. Okay. And also there's this URL setting here. So if you set a URL, when you click, there's a web link on the page for the site. And if you click on that, it'll take you to whatever link you set. So I tend to put my link as my QRZ page. So I do that. All right. Now, let's talk about the node type. Now, there's two types of nodes, private and public. What does this mean? Actually, I need to come back to that because we haven't got to the point where we can affect anything there. So forget I said that. We'll come back to that in a minute. APRS host, you want to set this to no AM. No AM is North America. No, North America. You want to set your time zone to, if you're not in the Denver area currently, you set it to whatever you want, but we're going to set it to America. Where's America? AM comes before AS. Very good. Because I know my letters. And there is an America Denver there. And then dashboard language, English US. So the first things you want to do is set these, apply changes. Now, every time you apply a change, it's going to think about it for a second. It's going to refresh the screen to a page. It'll tell you, hey, we saved those changes. And then it's going to restart services. And then it'll come back to the configuration page. All right, yeah, so your modem selection has been updated. Please reselect your modem. Yes, we haven't selected the modem yet because we haven't done anything. Now, you'll notice now we have all this good stuff up here, okay? One of the things that Pi-Star does that the OpenSpot does not do is allow you to have two protocols running simultaneously, okay? So you can have D-Star and DMR running at the same time. Now, you can't service two protocols at the same time, but you can have them running. And what happens is that whatever radio connects in first, that's the one it'll talk to. So if you have DMR and D-Star running and a D-Star radio connects to the modem first, and then someone comes in on a DMR radio, it won't respond to the DMR radio because it's talking to the D-Star radio. So it won't duplex in that way, but you can have two protocols going on, radio protocols going on at the same time. Okay. Okay. So we're going to do this simplex because this particular setup that we're talking about here has a simplex hat. So we're going to turn on DMR mode. Now here again, we have to apply the change because every time you do something, you want to apply the change. And then we'll talk about hats. Any questions at this point? Is any of this confusing? Anything not making sense? Okay. Good. All right, so when we select DMR, some other things will come in and allow you to do things, okay? We have this DMR configuration section, which is the big thing that we need to be able to get to. So what we're going to do now is we also have this ability to put in a DMR ID, all right? Now, the DMR ID is going to be your radio ID, or I would actually more call it a hotspot ID or a repeater ID that'll show up in Brandmeister. Now, you do not have to go out and get one. This is the good news, right? If you're using DMR, you already have a radio ID, and you can reuse that. So this is how this works. So my radio ID that I'm going to use is 3108111. Now, yes, this is the same as your radio, but there's a way to make sure that that's not going to be a problem. What you do is you scroll down here to the DMR configuration, and there's this thing called the DMR ESS ID. You want to set that to something. On this particular hotspot, I'm using 03. So when you go looking for your hotspot ID in Brandmeister, it will be this plus that. So mine here would be 3108111103. So it makes it unique from your radio ID while still allowing you to use your already individually assigned radio ID. Does it make sense? So it makes it to where you don't have to go out and go through the process of getting another ID. Not necessary. You can just do this way and it's absolutely fine. Okay. Excellent. Now, we need to set the modem type. Now, this is really going to depend on the hardware that you got. And if you, when you got your hardware, they will typically tell you what to select here. And some of it is very, very, very obvious. I have a Zoom spot that is a single band Zoom spot with that's a Pi hat with the GPIO pins. So there's my Zoom spot. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead here and apply the changes and let that settle in. Wait for it to refresh. There we go. And boom. All right. Excellent. So we've set up on the network, we've set up our frequency, we've selected our hat, we've got most of this done. Now it is time to connect to Brandmeister, right? Now there are 3 master servers in the United States, 3101, 3102, and 3103. If you go to the Brandmeister website, and let's see if we can get the wiki going. Where's the wiki? Información. Go to the wiki, right? You go to the wiki. You can go to countries, go to United States, and it'll show you the 3 master servers, okay? 3101 is in New York, 3102 is in Texas, and 3103 is in California. Most people that I know in the Denver area will use the Texas one before anything else, just because if you do a ping on each one of these IP addresses from your network at home, you'll see that the Texas one generally gives you the lowest response times, or the less lag, the less latency. All right. So we'll pop back over here. We'll choose 3102 for the Brandmeister server there. And here is where you put in your hotspot security password that you set up earlier, as I showed you how to do earlier. Mine is randomly generated. There we go. Without that, the Pi-Star will not be able to connect to the Brandmeister network. It will not connect. Okay. The color code here is your DMR color code. It's defaults to 1. Unless you have some special reason to change that, you can just leave that alone. Apply changes. And if we did everything correctly, okay, let that reboot. Now we're going to go up here to admin, which is kind of the dashboard with extra stuff. And we can see that we are connected to the master server. Our DNR net is up. This is here. We have our transmit receive frequency, the firmware of our hat. This is just a clock chip thing that shows up. I don't know why they actually put it up there, because most people don't need to use that. Your ID, it doesn't show the ESID, but it's there, and your color code. Now, if you are using a single slot hat, you will be on time slot 2. It's just the way it is. It's the way it's programmed. If you have a duplex hat and you set up full duplex, you'll have both a slot 1 and a slot 2. Okay, but this particular Pi-Star is now ready to go. I am going to go back to the configuration and set a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do is turn off UPnP. Now, there are some features that UPnP is very, very useful for certain configurations that does nothing to do with Brandmeister on this particular case. And a lot of people will consider UPnP as a security risk. So I just turn it off so it doesn't become a risk. Turn it off on your Pi-Star, you turn it off on your router so that it's not automatically opening ports for things to get in. The other thing that you probably want to do is change the password to the interface. So if you come down here to the very bottom under the Wi-Fi, here is the Pi-Star remote access password. This is the password that you use to log in. So if I change this, set a password, it goes red until the passwords match. You hit set password. As soon as it resets, it's going to make you log in again with your new password. Logged in with the new password. We're back into the interface. And boom. Let me go back. And there we go. Questions to this point? Because that's pretty much, we went from 0 to a setup Raspberry Pi-Star device.
Yeah, I have one quick question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so if let's say you fat fingered your DMR password, would the only way to tell that you did that is it doesn't say connected?
Yeah. And it's really easy. You just go back to your self-care site, type the password in again, come back here, type the password in again, and connect. One thing that I will do is I'll bring up like a notepad screen, and I'll type it in there, and then I'll just copy it and paste it so that I don't fat finger it. Just don't save it because that's a security risk. All right. Let's see.
So the other question I had was, I noticed that when you were filling out that first master configuration page, you didn't finish one section before going to the next. Is that just part of the logical flow, or is there a reason to jump to one of the lower sections before applying the changes to the upper section?
Yeah, this section doesn't really populate until you get most of this stuff down here is set up. I don't know why. That's just the way it's programmed. But this is the more important section to get set up first before you go back up to the other things. Just because it's kind of like housekeeping kind of stuff to do first. You can do it pretty much in any order, but this is the way that makes the most sense so you don't forget something. So the general section first, you set up your hat, you turn on the mode that you want, you do the mode settings down here, and off you go.
So
Now,
apply settings anywhere on this page, not just the section that you've changed.
yeah, they put these extra buttons here for convenience. So you can change something here, and click the apply changes button here, and it'll apply the changes for the entire page. It just gives you to where you don't have to go to the bottom to hit the apply button, apply changes button. It makes it more convenient. Now, let's talk about the private public thing. This mainly really comes into play when you want to let other people use your PyStar, okay? By default, it's set to private. And what that means is that only a radio with the radio ID that you put in here will be able to transmit through your PyStar, okay? Now, I'm a guy that earlier on, because I'm doing testing and doing code plugs and whatnot, and to be able to test code plugs and what, I have more than one radio ID. And some of my radios have a radio ID different from this one. So if I want to use that radio ID in the PyStar, I have to set it public and hit apply changes. Now, the danger of this, of course, is that this allows anybody with a DMR radio with a radio ID to come out on your Raspberry Pi or your PyStar. You can control this, okay? To a certain degree. There's certain people that still can do some swanky things in order to get past. But once you check this public button, where did it go? Where is that screen? Oh, ooh, it's not showing up. That's interesting. Let me go back to the admin and come back to here and see if it populates. Doing it live, always something. Back to configuration. Ooh, that's not good. Do you see what's not there, Willem?
Try hitting apply changes again. You know, if one hammer tap is good, two is better.
They're doing the Fonzie method. Absolutely. There is something else that we can do if this doesn't work. It'll actually be another topic we can talk about, and then show up. Okay,
Command
so,
line.
no. What we want to do is update. So you click the update button. Guess what it's going to do? It's going to update the PyStar software. Oh, look, command line. No hands. You guys didn't know I could type this fast, did you? Thank you for that one guy that actually smiled at that joke. Okay, that finished. Let's go back to the panel here and see what the panel says. So now we're at dashboard version 2021-03-22. That was only 2 days ago. Very good. Let's go back to configuration and see what it says. Hey, there it is. Imagine that. So this is what it's supposed to look like. Keep your software updated. Now, the cool thing about the PyStar is it'll automatically update software overnight. if there's an update. So the next day you'll always have the updated software, which is nice. So what this allows you to do is put in a comment separated list of allowed radio IDs. 3108111, 3108114. Apply. And now I'm public, which means it'll allow other radio IDs, but it'll only allow the ones in that list. This does not stop someone from putting your radio ID in their radio and transmitting with it, but it does give you a measure of control. Okay? And that is good. Oh, I see what happened. Oh, this is interesting. So you notice this change down here, right? We're gonna have to go back and reset. That's what happened, because this happened to me before. Oh, and this is what happened to this would happen to K0JSC. They updated the software and didn't tell anybody. So now they changed the DMR section. So now you have to go back and reselect your master. That's very interesting. Apply changes, see what that does. Someone's got some audio coming through their mic. If everybody could go on mute unless they're asking a question, that'd be cool. All right, let's see what that does to the section once that applies. This is cool. This is what happens when you do a workshop and you do it live, right? Okay, so now that we select the master as the master goes back to normal, thank goodness. And I need to set this back to 3, apply that. All right. Whee! Cool. New stuff. Now, something that is important to understand for housekeeping is that that overnight process only updates the Pi-Star software. It does not update the underlying operating system, okay? Let me see if I can remember where. We can go in here and say,
I think the best way to do it is from the command line.
the only way you can do it is from the command line. How you like them apples?
Love
Let me see if I can remember what the command is.
I knew we'd get to SSH, Willem.
Yeah. Now here's the fun part. Here's the fun part. You do not have to go to SSH in from outside. I'll show you that in a second. Yeah, upgrade is what it is. Yeah, so it's update. Let's go back up here. So there's the automated overnight updates and there are the manually launched updates. Okay. What is the command? Yeah, sudo Pi-Star update. Okay. Now you don't have to have PuTTY. You don't have to have anything really funky. You go into, so from the admin console, this is where I spend most of my time, is in the admin console. What you do is you go to configuration, you go to expert, and right here at the bottom, you have this SSH access link. And again, you'll have to, again, this is the same credentials as the web interface. I changed my password, right? So you do sudo, and notice here at the top here where it says RO, that means that your command line, that your Pi file system is in read-only mode, right? So nothing's being written. It helps save that the condition of the SD card is really great. So what you would do is get in there. Thank you. Yeah. Now I'm not going to do it because this takes a long time, but that is how you would it updates both the Pi-Star software and it updates the underlying operating system software. So if you see anything about, in the Raspberry and that's called Raspberry Pi OS, the security issues, and you want to update that and make sure that gets updated on your Pi-Stars, that's how you do it. Okay.
So what you were mentioning a little bit ago about JSC system stopped working, it upgraded the software itself, and in the upgrade, it lost some of the configuration. Is that what happened?
I think so. I think that's what happened, because what happened is he actually had, they updated some things. and his system started to go wonky. He had a simplex hat, but he was running it in duplex mode. And when one day, all of a sudden, it just stopped working. And we were talking about it, and I noticed that that had happened and whatnot. And he actually had to put his back in simplex mode in order to get it working again. So it seems like they changed something. And, you know, and I don't know, I don't go to and look at the release notes before the automatic updates happen, right? So I think that is what happened. They changed something to where the duplex mode didn't work the way it worked before. That's what got something funky. He thought they'd have blocked him on Brandmeister, and once you put it in simplex mode, everything just started working again. So yeah, it was very interesting. So we did the master, not the master, the public versus private, right? That was that bit there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do what's called Brandmeister API integration. Okay. You need to go back to your account on the Brandmeister website. And let's see if mine's still working. We set the hotspot password in self-care. For API integration, you need to go to, I think it's profile settings. Yes, it is. So you go to profile settings. This password is the password to your account here, not your hotspot password. Don't get confused. But there is this button over here for API keys. This is where we want to go. So what this does is allows you to generate an API key that is specific to your account in order to do things from the hotspot. Now, I'm sure there's other things you can use this API key for, but in this case, we're going to use it to be able to do things from the Raspberry Pi, or the Pi Star, without having to come here. Now, why we're doing this, if you look over here, here's my hotspot. And go to view my hotspot. There it is in all its glory. Whee! I can actually zoom in on where my house is and that kind of a thing. Here's all my stuff. There's the link that I put in. All the fun things. Now, your Pi Star will function just like a default Raspberry Pi, the default Brandmeister repeater, in that all of the talk groups on Brandmeister are user activated. So if you key up on a talk group, it'll get activated on your hotspot. You'll be able to talk back and forth. And if you don't transmit for 10 or 15 minutes, it'll drop off your Pi Star. You can set a talk group static by going into here, right? Go your hotspots once you're logged in. Go to your hotspot here, and down here, here's your static talk groups, right? 3108, which is Colorado. Okay. Now, if I go back to my hotspot here, I go to admin, which is the main thing here. We should see that. Now, here it is. Here's our master. Here's our static talk groups. Right? Now, I'm an efficient kind of guy, which means I'm incredibly lazy. I don't want to have to go all over here and log in and go to the site in order to get these set up. I want to be able to do that from the Pi Star interface. Okay? So you can do that. Under profile settings, API keys, and what you do is you click add. Now, these are supposed to be very secure, so these work in a very, very specific way. You click add, you give it a name. I'm going to call this new key. You can call it Pi Star key, you can call it Fred, you can call it whatever you want. As soon as you click the OK button, it's going to pop up this. This is your API key. There's also a QR code if you want, right? But this is the only time you will see this key. As soon as you click OK, it goes away. And if you didn't get it, the only way to get around it is just to revoke it and start over. Okay? Now, once you have your key, and I would say leave that up until you're done and then close it off. What you do is you go to your hotspot, you go to configuration, you go to expert again, but this time we're going to click on the link for Brandmeister API or BM API. It's at the bottom right after the Wi-Fi section. It says BM API. You click on that, you get this big square. It's literally all you get. And what you do is you paste your API key into that square and click apply changes. Now it goes real quick, and then so it's not going to look at that thing. It should look blank after it. And then when you go back to your admin screen, if you did everything right, you now have this Brandmeister Manager section, which is very swanky. Let's say I wanted to add in, 310815, which I know is the WE0FUN network set that that gets linked into this. I'm going to add it. I'm going to hit modify static and wait. And it says here, talk group 310815 added on slot 0, which is actually slot 2. Don't get me started. And then it shows up here as one of my static talk groups. I can then take it off if I want. 310815. I change this to delete. Notice how it automatically defaults to time slot 2, so you don't have to keep selecting that. Modify static. And it says removed, and as soon as it refreshes, it's gone. So that allows you to add static talk groups on the fly from your interface without having to go back and forth to the Brandmeister website in order to do it. Very, very, very handy. Questions? No questions. I've still left everybody speechless. Okay. Let me share with you.
I do have a question,
Okay.
Mike.
Go ahead.
So for on the static, since we've got a couple of the RMHAM talk groups through Brandmeister, if you wanted it to come up on Central, you could define that. So anytime your hotspot reboots, it'd come up on Central.
Correct. So what actually happens when you do this? Okay. This whatever you have set as that static is actually managed at the server. Okay. So what you're actually doing is attached with your basically account at Brandmeister, you're saying that when this repeater or hotspot comes in with this repeater ID, this talk group is set static. Okay. So if you reboot the hotspot, it stays there. If you reinstall the software from scratch and use the same ESID and attach to the same Brandmeister server, it'll come back showing up as still static, right? Because that information is kept and managed at the Brandmeister server, not on the Pi-Star itself. So the Brandmeister server is telling the hotspot that this particular talk group is static on the hotspot. That's the way it works. That's the way the Brandmeister process works. Okay. So the central 0801, I believe. North.
I don't think so.
Whoop, what did I do? Modify static. Is this being okay? There we go. 01310813, which is north. And 310816, which is south. Now these are Brandmeister talk groups. These aren't RMHAM talk groups. These are Brandmeister talk groups. And we have K0GSC has this set up to where he has a linking machine that listens on the RMHAM network and on the Brandmeister network. And when someone transmits on one of these Brandmeister talk groups, it sends it out to the RMHAM network and then broadcasts out, and vice versa, right? So there's actually a physical piece of hardware that he has that links these together. Okay. All right. Now, something that you can do to test to make sure everything is working. Go back to United States. I wonder if I'm trying to remember if this is documented here, because I want you guys to be able to go and get documented on this. Yeah. So you can use private call 9990 or 310997. Plug that in as your transmit talk group, and also make sure it's in your receive group. And you can do what's called a parrot test. Okay. So what a parrot test is that it's a special talk group that they set up there, where you can transmit through your hotspot to the Brandmeister server, and it'll just go to the Brandmeister server, and then whatever you transmit will transmit back to your radio through the hotspot. So this allows you to test to make sure everything's working without bothering anybody else on a talk group or whatnot. Now you'll see this show up here in the local RF activity thing. There's nothing there yet because we're brand new. When I transmit out, and then you'll see it come back in the gateway activity when it comes back. So let's see if this works. All right, here we go. Getting ready to embarrass myself. K0NGA parrot test 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I didn't have the volume up. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it went. So it did come back. So that is the first thing I think everybody should do when they set one of these up, is to go ahead and do the parrot test first, so that, again, you see that your Pi is receiving, your Pi Star is receiving your radio, and that when it sends back, your radio is able to hear it. Okay. Now, when you're programming your radio here, this is, like I said, this is a simplex hat. So you're setting the transmit and receive channels to the same frequency, right? You'll also notice over here that when it was stopped transmitting for a little bit here, this turned yellow and said DMR listening. All right, so there's kind of a tail on this to where it'll only listen for DMR, because it assumes you're having a conversation over DMR through the Pi Star, and it doesn't want to allow another radio technology to come in erroneously and interrupt the conversation. So it'll actually block out other radio technologies if you have more than one set up for a certain amount of time. And then once that timeout goes, it'll then drop down and listen to all of them so that it doesn't erroneously break up a conversation.
So does the Pi Star support a Morris ID, so it's technically legal? Or I know the OpenSpot does.
OpenSpot does. That's a good question.
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Who was that?
It's K0MGL, Greg. It's in the configuration expert, I believe, MMDVM host, I want to say. And I think it's down at the bottom.
Do you know what it's
There it is.
labeled?
Yeah, CWID.
CWID, right there. There it is. And you just put the, it's not as the bottom, it's right up at the top. Further up, yeah. It's fourth down. Fourth big red bar down.
Oh, see, there it is here. Okay. So enable one, and time is 10 minutes?
Yep.
Okay. That's good. They should put that in the main configuration UI, in my personal opinion.
Yep.
They should put that in here. Okay. Now, from here, I'm going to go ahead and transmit out on Colorado, because why not? All right, okay, let's see. This is K0NGA on Brandmeister 3108 Colorado during a Pi Star session. Testing, please ignore. And it went out.
Good evening from W1EAM on Colorado State Line.
W1VA and K0NGA, thanks for the call back. I'm just doing a live test because I'm reckless like that. Brave, I think, maybe a good one. Showing off the Brandmeister interface and testing for the class. So I appreciate the call back. It's K0NGA. I'll be standing by. No, there it says listening DMR, and then here it comes back in.
Very good, right? Yeah, the Brandmeister is kind of a user point to your destination type of deal. That you can just dial up any number corresponding to where you want to talk. So pretty neat stuff on the DMR stuff here. This is W1BAM.
And there we go. Ham's playing. Yeah. No comment. Okay. Now that's really the way to get everything running up to where it's easy to manage for your static talk groups and whatnot. Again, in order to program your radio, you need to program in the frequency, you need to program the talk group that you want to talk on and put it in the receive group. Depending on your radio, like my Anytone, you can set it up to do what digital monitor, which some people call promiscuous mode, to where you don't actually have to have the talk group in the receive group in order to listen. Some radios, like the cheapy ones, like my little Radioddity here, it does not have a digital monitor or promiscuous mode, so you do have to put everything into a receive group. For Brandmeister, my preferred method of that, and this is something that came out of frustration, is that I have one massive, what I call a BM all receive group. And anytime I create a Brandmeister talk group, I'll label it BM something. And as soon as I create it, I will then put it into the Brandmeister all receive group so that all my Brandmeister channels have the same receive group. And all I have to do is change the talk group, and that's it. Just a word from a tip from me to you. Any other questions at this point? Because really, that's it. It's up and running. It's successful. I can make contacts. I can receive contacts. And that is how you do it from the ground up. Now, for something a little extra, let's do this, because this will be interesting. All right, I'm going to change over to my other camera, and hopefully what you can see there is my Pi-Star. This is the very first one that we have been transmitting on, but you'll notice it has a screen. This is one of two very popular models of screen for the NextGen. One has a little bit more memory on it than the other, but it does require a driver. And this was a question that was actually asked to me before we got started, is that are we going to address the driver issue? And yes, I'm going to address the driver issue right now. Let me go ahead and get some of these tabs closed. Talk about cases in a minute. Yep. Okay. There is a post on the Pi-Stars forums. So if you go to Pi-Star UK, go to help, there is a link to the forums on how to install the NextGen driver in Pi-Star 4.1.4. This, from the research that I've done, because I ran into this, tends to go in and out from different versions. Some versions, the NextGen screens work out of the box. They update to the next version, they mess something up and it doesn't work out of the box. Apparently, we're in a not work out of the box phase with 4.1.4. And so this is one of the maintainers of that came back and said, this is the way you do it. Now, he starts out by saying that in order for the driver to be installed correctly, it needs to have a fresh, untampered MDVM host configuration. You must start from scratch for the install to work properly. I have found this not to be the case in my experience, because I did this with one that had already been set up and it worked just fine. All right. But there are certain things that you do want to make sure that you do in order for this to be successful. Okay. And it's going to require a little bit of typing, and it does require command line. I'm sorry. But you can do this from the built-in SSH Pi-star password, which is not password. Okay. Now we're going to go back to this particular link here. All right. Now, does it say to set that up? So what you want here from my particular screen, because most of these screens will connect to a connector on your hat. Okay. Some of them are USB. For this one, I'm going to set this up. So it says to set the screen to nextgen. You want the device set to the USB 0 and then the screen to this ON7LDS L3HS partridge in a pear tree. Where did my interface go? Did I lose my interface? No, there it is. Okay, so let's go back to configuration. So we want to go to nextgen screen. This is the default, so we're going to leave it default. And then we want this LDS L3. Now there's a model that's high speed. If you get one and it's a high speed model, you should know that it's high speed, and both of them are not high speed. So we just set it to L3 and then commit the changes to start. So you want that to be there before you start installing the driver. All right. Now we can go to wait for it to refresh. Expert, SSH access, very secure, login again. Okay. So we're gonna go back to post. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go into the temp directory. Now it's important to understand that if you're not a Linux guru, as Mark falls asleep on us on the screen there. That is the danger of having your video on. That anything that's in the /tmp directory gets deleted when you reboot. Okay, so we want to go into the tmp directory. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the file system read write. Now you can copy and paste these commands in, and I'm going to do that here in a minute. RPI-RW. That. Now you notice that our little prompt went from RO to RW. So now we're in read-write mode. It's very important that you do that or this will not work. So now what we're going to do is we're going to download the driver software and bits and whatnot from the GitHub repository. So the command is this long string here. It's basically git clone, which is pull down, and then it gives the link to the appropriate section on the repository. Now, here's a cool thing that I didn't know until I tried it. You can right-click, paste from the browser, put in the command and paste, click OK, and it'll actually put it in there so you don't have to type it out. So now it's cloning the repository, which means basically it's downloading all the code. And then there's a command. Oops, didn't want that. What did I do? Yikes. Am I still sharing the screen? Somebody tell me about
stopped.
Okay, so I need to reshare. That was weird. Okay. There we go. All right. That thing is in the way. This is, so now we're going to go and we're going to then, with the sudo command, with administrative privileges, run the install. Now, here's the thing that you need to know, because if you read through this, what you realize is that you're going to do this twice. And the first time you go through it, it's going to ask you if you want to reboot, and you need to say no. Then you're going to run the command again, and you're going to say yes to a reinstall and then yes to a reboot. This is convoluted, but this is the way that the process goes. So we're going to go ahead and run the command. Continue installing, yes. And there's no enter required there. When you type the yes, it immediately goes on. It is actually compiling the driver. Yeah, the service wasn't loaded. We know, come on. Blah, 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 blah. Now it says, the tester works as expected. We will reboot the hotspot. Okay, and this is where we say no. Not rebooting. So now we have to do the same thing again. So I'm just going to do the up arrow enter method. Ooh, oh yeah, so it deleted the install as a thing. So now we got to go back here where you should still be. We're still in rewrite mode, so we don't have to do that. We're still in the temp directory, so we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to go back here and reclone the repository. Paste from browser. No, we don't have to paste from browser. We have it in the command history. Boop, boop. There we go. And then we can go and redo the command again. So continue installing. Yes. Reinstall. Yes. Notice it said no nextgen driver found. Weird process. Not my process. So please don't blame me for the process. And now do we want to reboot? Yes, we want to reboot. So now it says it's closed because we're now rebooting. And we'll wait for this to come back. Now, hopefully when this comes back up, we'll see something change on the screen here.
And where did you find the instructions that you're running through here to install the driver?
Found them on the Pi-Star forums. All right, we're back up. And if we go to configuration, you'll notice now that it says dev-tty nextgen driver, and that's what you want to see. Okay. Now let's make, I'm going to do a parrot test so that we're not bothering anybody. And we'll see if the screen changes here. K0NGA parrot test 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I hit the wrong button. That's silly. K0NGA parrot test 1. Oh, something is not right because my things over here are red. That is not good. What did we do? Well, this is fun. Again, live, doing it live. Nextgen driver, screen. Okay, interesting. Is it up yet? Not up yet. Okay. I'm going to try an old trick. Because again, the Nextgen screen is attached to the hat. So this is basically going to be a hat reset. Or try to do a hat reset here. This has happened to me before. It's good that we're doing this live so you can see this happening. There's something else we can try if this doesn't work. So, oh, it did not go off the hat. And we're not back yet, are we? Okay. So there is a command. I just have to find the command for it. It. There is a command. I know there's because I've used it before. I'm going to do this the hard way. Configuration expert, SSH access. All right, here's all the commands. There we go, mmdvm. HS hat reset. Sure that is, yep. Okay, modem reset complete. We're green again. Let's make sure that that stays that way. Nope, it does not. That is not cool. Yeah, this is very interesting. See if that. Yeah. Now here's something you may not know that you can do. I'm going to right click and open that link in a new tab so I can go over to the configuration here. We'll go back to here, anyway, to admin. I'm going to run a command. Any other reset commands? Host enable, hat downgrade, hat flash, yeah. Zoom slots just a flash command. Okay. Okay. So it came back up as green. Let's see if it stays put. Nope. That is very, very not cool. All right, I'm going to look at my machine real quick and make sure that it wasn't, it's not like the GPIO pins are off or something.
Is this related to the screen, Mike? Because it kind of mirrors my experience with the Pi Star. Adding the screen was an utter exercise in futility.
Yes, and like I said, a lot of the stuff is still experimental, as you may have guessed, and it's not perfect. Now, this usually works, but like I said, sometimes they update things, and the update doesn't go, it goes a little wonky.
Well, when I had installed my nextgen screen, I had to actually go into the nextgen compiler, try to rebuild it, and of course, the compiler kept on rejecting it as saying everything is out of date. I finally got it to work, but it was a friggin' nightmare.
Yeah, I bet. I'm just going to go ahead and shut it down. I'm actually going to power the thing off. Because now to tell you that this was working just fine, and I did not refresh my SD card with the one that I was using so that I can go back to the one that was working later. Because I'm not that much of a sadist. But like I said, I mean, this is unusual for it to do this, and then all of a sudden the screen makes it to where the hat doesn't work. That's unusual. That's very unusual. But we did have it up and working. It was working. We made a contact. That much of it is done. The nextgen driver stuff. This is why we put this at the end of the session. Because this is definitely something that can cause problems. All right. This is on a cold reboot. Please stay up and working, please.
Looks good so far.
Yeah, but it's not recognizing my transmission. No bueno. Oh, that's weird. Oh, yeah. Come. Hello. It's connecting. Ooh, that's lovely. Glorious.
I think it grabbed a
wait.
different DHCP address.
Yeah. I actually have it set, and this is one of the things I do to cheat. I have it set up to as a static based on the MAC address. That way, that's one less thing that I have to worry about when things like this happen. Okay, where is my dongle? There's my dongle. This is what we call cheating for effect. Okay. So the lesson here is that be prepared to do some troubleshooting when things like this go wonky on a Pi-Star, just because, again, it's not a commercial release product, it's not an all-in-one. It is what it is, and that is a project. And of course, I'm not going to go through the process of wiping it into the nextgen screen first, because everybody here has more valuable things to do. But yeah, if you're going to put a nextgen screen on, I would start from scratch and do the nextgen screen first, so you're not wasting time doing config in case you have to start from scratch. So, but I wanted to set the theme because not everybody's going to have a nextgen screen on the device. So this is the, let's see. Oh. Okay. Yep, so we're up in green now. So what I just did is I put the SD card back in that I was using before. And magically everything's working. And you can tell that this is working because if you look at the bottom here, see my call sign. Now, the thing to understand about these nextgen screens is that they don't work like a standard computer screen, okay? There's actually firmware and a design that runs on the screen itself, okay? So what you're seeing here is one design out of several that have been released on the web, on the internet, that are available for these screens, okay? And changing them is a little out of the scope of this talk, but essentially what you do is you find one, you download the nextgen screen software, you pull it in and you save it in a specific, the whole file, which has all the settings that you can get, like people put it up on their GitHub repositories or whatnot. You save it to a file. You put that file on a micro SD card by itself, one file. You plug it into the SD card slot on the nextgen screen, and then you power it on. And what it does, it basically comes up to that, do you want to put this in your screen? You say yes. It uploads the code into the local memory of the screen and then reboots. And that's what you get here basically is blank screen. And what it does is it will query the Pi for what it should put in the screen stuff that it has, right? So that's what the driver is for. The driver is what tells the screen what information is going to be presented, what the labels are, and the screen says, oh, I know what that information is, that goes here, okay? So now I should be able to do another parrot test, and you'll see the screen change, hopefully, as we do this. K0NGA parrot test, 1, 2, 3, 4.
K0NGA parrot test, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. So that's what it looks like when the screen is working. All right. Now again, the nextgen screen stuff can be a little frustrating. If you run into that problem and you want some help, let me know. If I can set aside some time for you, I will. But when it does get working, it is kind of neat. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about. Go ahead.
So can you clarify from reading on here some research? So if you're connecting the screen to the hat, you can only get data from the Pi, and you have to use the USB if you want to use buttons or some things to run a macro or something on the Pi. Is my understanding correct on that?
So this one again. So the screen connects into the hat. The hat connects to the Raspberry Pi through the GPIO pins. Okay.
Yeah, what I see some people, I guess, talking about, rather than connecting it to the hat, you can connect it to USB on the
Yeah.
Pi if you want more functionality.
Yeah, and that is something that I have yet to do. I've never had a nextgen screen that connects to the USB, so it's kind of out of scope. But yeah, if you any deviation in this, you're gonna have to do your own research on how to get it working appropriately. Now that being said, if you look at my Pi, you'll notice that you don't see the Raspberry Pi. You see a nice case. Now this one is my most project to project Raspberry Pis, because I had to do a lot of stuff to this to make things work. It is in a case. There is a guy that makes cases. There's some fantastic cases. He's a guy from that runs a company called C4 Labs. And as you can see, that have all different cases based on what Pi you have and what hat you have. And they're really cool. He does have cases that'll fit the Raspberry Pi 4. Right, so there's a Pi 4 case and whatnot. Now, my case is essentially, where'd it go? Is essentially this one or this one, where the antenna is supposed to pop out from the hat, straight up. Mine, unfortunately, as you can see, comes out on the side here. Okay, now the way these things work is that you have a set of layers that get stacked. That's what he does. So if you look at the screen here, you can kind of see the layers here. If you pop down to here and look at the instructions, you'll see that basically what you're doing is that you're stacking the layers in order to build up the case. And what I had to do is, as you get to the upper layers here that get above where the hat is, I actually came in here with a pair of angled nose cutters and cut these out, so that the antenna connector could get out the side, which kind of left this nice little gnarly hole here where the antenna is supposed to be, but it works. Okay. The one thing I don't like about these cases, we're going on outside topics here, but it's something that I run into. The only thing I don't like about these cases is that there's no good ventilation. And if you've run a Raspberry Pi 3, and if you've had any experience with a Raspberry Pi 4, you know that they tend to run a little hot, right? So what I did is I went to this, and then you get this from this website. I went to the website here, and as you go into the upgrades and add-ons, they sell separately these what he calls flush nuts. Now, if you look on top of my Pi, you'll notice that the flush nuts are on top. So what you have with these is you have a rubber, essentially like a rubber grommet at the bottom that works as a foot. Okay, I don't use them because I put mine on the side, but the foot, the screw goes up to the foot, goes up through all the layers of the Pi of the case, and then this what he calls a flush nut slips down. It has this. If you look at the screen here, it has this little sleeve here. And then the inside of it screws onto the nut, and then the flange on the top is what connects with the top of the case and goes down. These are unique to this company. I have not seen anybody else that has these, right? So what I did with these, if I go back to the case for a second, you can see, if I look at the side view, if you do the case up, it basically blocks everything out except for the ports on the side and the ports on the end where the connections go. Where's the other end? They have another one on the other end, and then the port where the SD card goes in. So what I did is I took this thing apart, and then I built it up just until you get this layer. Where's this layer here, which holds the Pi in place? I then put a flush nut upside down here, and then another one right side up to create a gap. And then I continued on. Actually, I need to show the one with the big screen. Hold on. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Very good. This will be better. Yeah, here we go. So I continued on until I got to this layer here, which is just below the screen. So this layer is what holds the screen up, and that the flanges and the flush nut hold that layer up. Put the screen on, and then put the rest of it on top to hold the screen in place. So what this looks like from the side is like that. And that creates a nice gap in between for ventilation. So air could actually get into the case. Okay. Now, on the top, I have a fan. And that fan is blowing in through the side and blowing air into the pie so that the air actually gets blown onto the top where the heat sinks on that came with the kit. Now it's blowing in from this side because this side has the antenna. So I set it up like this so the antenna blocks it. So on my other ones, it actually blows into the side so it doesn't block the connectors here. But in this one, I had to put it on the side. Now, the way that I got that fan to work is another interesting story, because what happens with the hat is that it blocks the GPIO pins on the Pi. So this is another thing that I found by going to Amateur Radio Notes, going to the Pi Star. I think if I do, nope, I have to search for it to figure it out. If I search for shim, yeah, there's a company called Pi Moroni, and here is the actual site for Pi Moroni, and here is the shim. You can get these on Amazon. They do sell out, but they do tend to restock fairly often. Now, the whole shim slips over the GPIO pins, and it's very thin. But the problem is with this shim is that if you put a hat on, there's not really a lot of place for the air to go. So what you do is you actually use the shim as a fan connector. Now, I did this before I found this in the Amateur Radio Notes. I did this, and I didn't even know it was the Amateur Radio. Came back and said, "Oh, they already did this. Why didn't I? If I'd known about this, I would have done this sooner." So what you do is that you take the fan off, you snip the connectors from the fan, and then you snip the shim right below the connector here and right here just to make it smaller. Then when you put it on the Raspberry Pi before you put on the hat, and what that gives you is a nice little power cable for your fan. So I just shove that out the side of the case. Now that I have, this nice little area here with this big gap here, and then I have put the fan on with the connector, and then I tied the fan down with twist ties because I'm super, super luxurious around the cage nut, the flush nuts that I'm using to keep the Pi up. And that just keeps it centered on there. I can actually pick it up by that, and just keeps it flush against the fan, against the case, so that the air flows down and in and keeps the Pi cool. And as you can see from the interface here, if I can get the interface back up, you'll notice that my Pi is running at 40 degrees C. And this thing can go very easily to 45, 50 degrees C without any ventilation. And mine stays really cool 40 degrees C or below during normal operation. So I know that fan is working. So a little tip for me, if you want me to explain this a little deeper, if you want to go over the build when you get your case or whatnot, just let me know. But this is a very, very simple little modification you can make that if you get the right hat, you don't really have to do a lot of mods because the antenna comes out the top. These fans from, this is a 40 millimeter fan, 10 millimeter tall, just real 10 millimeter tall, so the short one from Noctua. It is the 3-pin, not the 4-pin PDMA, right? Now the great thing about this fan is expensive. It's like a $15, $18 fan. But the cool thing is that when you get the fan, not only do you get the wire tail with the connector, but you get these little, Willem, what did you call these nuts? Willem, are you on mute?
Yeah, I can't see them, so I'm not sure what you're referring to.
These little things here. I think it might have been John that told me about these.
Yeah, it was John.
All right.
Phone company nuts.
Yeah. So what these are, if you look at them, I think I may have. Give me a second here.
They're called 3M ST connectors.
Yeah. Now the Noctua says that they're Omni joins NA-JC2. So you get 4 with the fan. So when you buy the fan, you get these. And I don't know if you can see it, but there is a orange tab that is sticking up from up there, and then these 2 holes that you put in. And what you do is you slide in the cables into the nut that you want to connect in, and then you use a pair of pliers to shove that orange tab down, and it puts down a connector into the cables to connect them in, and then there's gel in them to hold everything in place and to make it watertight. So it's a very easy way without any additional tools to connect those wires together. So you connect the 2 wires coming from the Pineroni shim to the fan connector adapter that you get with the fan. You then connect the fan and it runs.
So I found those connectors on Amazon. They're called 3M Scotch Lock.
Yeah.
LOK.
But the cool thing about buying the fan from Noctua, not only is Noctua a fantastic company and their fans are top notch, absolutely top notch, they send you these connectors with the fan. So you don't have to go out and buy them. That is just amazing. It's awesome. So that's how I case up my projects for this, and that's how I keep it cool, is with that particular little fan shim mod and the fan from Noctua. Questions on that? So we had somebody coming in the chat. Cool. Awesome. Excellent. All right. So that is, I must admit, one of 3 high stars that I have. Noctua. So if I go to smile.amazon.com, where Rocky Mountain Ham Radio is my charity of choice, and if you put in Noctua, why am I caps locking? Noctua 40 millimeter 5 volts fan. You want the 5 volt version. You need to make sure it is the 5 volt version, and you need to make sure it is the 3 pin. So this is the one you want here. NF A4X10. X10 means it's 10 millimeters wide because there's a 20 millimeter wide one. There's no reason to pay for that, pay for the extra bit. Quiet fan, 3 pin, 5 volt. That's the one you want. And it is $14 and they're in stock. They're not always in stock, unfortunately. They're a very popular maker fan. But that's my own little personal mod there. And again, the nuts, you can really only get from C4 Labs. He does tend to ship very quickly though, which is cool. Let me make sure I got the right ones. Boop. Passwords, man, bane of my existence. Well, crud. Yeah, okay. So if I go back to the C4 Labs site.
Well, I think we probably should start wrapping it up. We have been going for 2 hours, so.
Oh, good. Yeah, cool. Just before you go, if you want these nuts, this is important to understand. If you want these nuts, there are 2 versions, the metric and the English 4-40. You want the English 4-40 versions. 20 will last you an entire project unless you're doing multiple of these. You'll need 8 additional ones per case if you're going to do my mod. So if you get 20 of them, you'll be able to do 2 cases. But yeah, these are unique to this case and unique to this company, but they do sell them separately, which is really cool. All right. Excellent. Well, that was a lot of fun. I expected one thing to go wrong. I'm glad it was the nextgen driver that went wrong and not something else. That was very pleasing. That nothing else went wrong. All right. Any questions before we officially shut down? Cool. Well, thanks for coming. If you have any questions or anything comes up, you can email me at k0nga@arrl.net. Happy to answer any question that I have. And if you want some assistance with setting up your case or whatnot, if you get parts and whatnot, just let me know. So thanks for coming, and I hope you enjoyed. I had a good time. Will, I'm back over to you.
Thank you very much, Mike. And thanks everybody. We'll see you again on April the 10th, I believe.
See you guys then.
Thank you.